Hi, good evening everybody, and welcome to the tutorial where I'll be teaching you how to make a yoga mat cover bag. Obviously this has got lots of techniques in it that are adaptable to lots of other projects, so I'll be recapping on some things that you might have done with me in previous tutorials. So there's some similar techniques to the bolster cushion we made, because we're going to be adding a circular base or doorstop. And then we're going to be using just a couple of simple bag making gadgets like D-rings and sliders, and make it a simple drawstring casing. So a really adaptable project. Hi everybody. So fairly simple in terms of techniques, but maybe just some food for thought in case you don't like the idea, or you won't really have the use for a yoga mat bag, but you could definitely transfer these techniques to other projects. So this is it. The first thing I'm going to do is just go through just getting simple measurements. So it's got a drawstring top and it's got some D-rings and an adjustable strap. So you can either make it kind of an over the shoulder bag or obviously across the body bag and just extend it. So if you do any sort of bag making at all and you've always had fixed straps, then this might just be a really nice technique for you to get some variation on that. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go through measuring the mat. So you want it to be fairly loose fitting so that you're not kind of fighting your mat into your bag. So I've taken two measurements. I've taken the circumference, so I've just measured nice and fitted around my mat. So my mat's got this very handy little bit of elastic around it, so it shouldn't make it too challenging to measure and get in the bag. So that's 54 centimetres in circumference, and the length of my mat is 60. So I would imagine that yoga mats are fairly standard in width. It might just be the circumference that's different. This is quite a squidgy one, so it might be a little bit more bulky. So I'm going to go based on my measurements, but I'll just talk you through in terms of when you are cutting your piece set what you want to do. So I added a centimetre top and bottom for seam allowance. We are adding that drawstring at the top as well, so don't worry about thinking, well, we're only just going to cover the mat. So the length of my material was 62 centimetres. But the circumference was also 60. So what I did is I made a loop with my tape measure, because my original mat was 54 centimetres. So I thought I'll add a couple of inches on for wriggle room. So I measured it at 60, and I was quite happy when I was putting that loop over my yoga mat that fit on quite nicely, like I said, with no restrictions. The last thing you want to be doing is like fighting it in there. Obviously if they do come a little bit more less coiled. So I was happy with 60 centimetres, so I added 2 on for seam allowance. So 62 wide and 62 in depth is what my fabric started at, which was great. It's a nice square. And then we're going to make a little bit for the cuff, which I'll tell you about later, and we need a little circle for the bottom, which I'll also tell you about later. So very basic. We've got three little bits of fabric: base, main, and the little bit for the drawstring at the top. And we've also got some other items, some sort of notions. I'm going to be using some of this bag strapping just because it's easier, but equally you could take these exact measurements and you could make some in your scrap fabric. So I've used 3/4 metre of the linen, but there is quite a proportion that is wasted. So if you didn't have the base in the coordinating fabric, then you could actually probably fit 2 on that and then have a base in maybe like a plain linen or a scrap or an accent colour or whatever. So you've got lots of scraps, so you might want to make your own strapping out of some coordinating fabric, but either way the same principle will be the same. So I'll flip you around, and the first thing we're going to do in preparing our bag, now we've got the measurements of the fabric, is to make the strap itself and then attach it to the fabric. So I'm just going to flip you around, so you can see. So I've got my bag strap in, and I'll tell you what measurements I've cut them to, and then this is all my little bits. So I've got 2 D-rings and a slider. These are for the end of my cord, and I've just got some piping cord because the actual nylon pull cord hasn't come, so, but it'll do the job. It'll be fine for the time being. Maybe just not a perfect match in colour and that. So I've got two lengths of the strapping that are 6 centimetres, and I'm using a 25mm wide strapping, but we also have 38. You can get it in all different sizes, and I guess it's all down to personal preference on how wide you want that strap in terms of comfort, but I don't think this is probably the kind of thing you're going to be wearing for a great deal of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 6 centimetre pieces, and I'm just going to slide them through the D-rings. And eventually these bits will be trapped in the seam, so the top seam of the bag where it's got the cuff on, and then the bottom seam where it's attached to the base. So I'm going to repeat that with the other side. Like that. And I'm going to take my bag strapping. So in terms of calculating this strapping, on the shortest setting, it will be about the length of the bag. So I've cut this 120 centimetres. So a part of this, of measuring the length, this might be experimentation, but then also it's personal preference. But I like the idea that obviously it could be a shoulder bag or it could be a crossbody bag. So I've doubled the measurement of my bag. So the height of my finished bag is going to be 60, and I've done this 120. So I've not got too much, and it's not too baggy, but also equally it's not going to be too small. So the first thing I'm going to do is just slide it on one side like that, and I'm just going to bend it back, because eventually we'll just be sewing along here. So this frays like crazy if you let it. So you can either use, I mean, you can get heat tools that sort of seal the end. And I've heard people talk about using lighters. I am not going to go down that road because it would end in disaster. So I'm just going to fold it back like that, probably by about 1 centimetre. Just to neaten it off on this side. And I'm going to put my pin through there just to hold that. So that's how the one end's going to look, just nice and simple. And then at the opposite end, again, I'm going to slide this on here. Like that. Let's have a mess around with that. You can always twist those around if you've not got them the right way. And then I'm going to put my slider on. So I'm going to push it up. And in fact, I'm telling you this wrong. Whoops. I'm going to put my slider on. It's like working with a snake, it's just slipping everywhere. So you can either get static sliders or you can get ones where the middle moves. It doesn't matter which one you've got. It's plastic or metal. Then I'm going to put my other D-ring in. And then I'm going to bring this strap, and I want to kind of move that out of the way. This is probably the hardest thing to show you tonight. And I want to just follow it through under there. This I know is going to be challenging to do with people watching, because you feel like you need about 3 hands. So I'm trying to go under there. Under there. Ah, come on. It's like threading a needle like in front of an audience, this. Right, there we go. So my original bag straps come through my slider. I've caught the D-ring and I've gone back underneath like that. So what I'll try and do is I'll try and do a little video of this afterwards, and just this bit, because obviously it can be a little bit confusing. And then what you want to do is bend it back on itself. So instead of carrying it on, going towards the other D-ring, I'm just going to fold it back, and I'm just going to catch that bottom layer. So again, I don't want too much fabric, so I'm just going to pull it back because I don't want to waste too much of the strap, and I'm just going to fold it back and pin through that bottom bit of the strap like that. So then just check that that top layer moves freely, and you can adjust it so it's just attached there like that. So like I said, I think probably would be beneficial to do a little video on that. So before I start to attach this to my bag, I'm just going to seal off with some tacking stitches, the ends of my small loops, just while I'm playing around with it, and then some nice permanent stitches on these bits here. So I've chosen for my project a colour of thread that best matches the strap, because these really are going to be the only visible stitches. So I'm just going to do some basting stitches or machine tacking. So I want to be on a straight stitch and just nice and loose, and it'll just hold those ends together just while we are sewing them in the bag. And I'm not getting attacked with millions of pins. And the same on the other side. So I'm hoping that this tutorial is nicely timed for people managing to get back to their fitness classes. So on the bits that are visible and that also need to be really sort of strong, I'm going to do a zigzag stitch. On my machine it's set in number 4, and I want it to be quite narrow. I don't want it to be massively wide, so I'm going to do about 2mm wide, and again this is all personal preference. And the length of the stitch, that's my top number on mine there, I want it to be quite small so that they are quite intense and close together. There is 3 thicknesses there of strapping, so I want to make sure that it's not going to get stuck on my machine. It's not too close together. So I'll just see how it gets on. I just want to make sure that it's moving, which I don't think that looks like it is. There we go. And then some nice reverse stitching. And I'm just going to give it a good couple of goes over so it's nice and strong. So you're looking for something a little bit like that. Probably less wonky than mine, but that will do. Like I said, I've matched my colour up for this so that it's going to be the best match. So on the other side, you want to remove that. So you've just got this bit here, so you're not attaching it to anything else that you don't want to, or else your slider won't work. And of course, if you wanted this to be neater than mine, straighter, you could just do some tacking stitches, or although this side is actually much neater, much happier with that. So now I've got my bag strap, got the slider working, and I've got my tabs on ready to insert into my bag. So I'm just going to nudge myself back off zigzag stitches before I end up doing the whole bag accidentally on zigzag. Oops. So I'm going to be working on my main bag piece, which was 62 centimetres square. Now, I think when I did my eucalyptus leaf bag, I've managed, obviously I always have to do something wrong with the print going the wrong way around, so I'm just going to be a bit mindful of that. Because does this have a direction? Does it? Oh, I'm not really sure if it does have a direction. I think I'm just going to have to wing that. So if you have got a definite direction, just make sure, if you've got a square piece like mine, that you are starting off with the right side. So I'm going to do a centimetre seam allowance all the way down one long edge and create a tube. So nice tight stitches this time. Don't want loose stitches. I want these to be constructive stitches. So I'm on 2.5 for my length. Let's be on the right seam allowance. There we go. So now I've created a tube, what I'm going to do is, particularly if you're using heavier weight fabric like canvas or I will sort of linen look fabrics, anything heavier weight tends to be a little bit of a wider weave and fray like crazy. So I'm going to do an overcasting stitch. If you've got an overlocker, it'd be an ideal time to use it. I'm going to use the zigzag stitch on my machine again, and this time I want my width to be quite wide. I really want it to sort of wrap around that edge of the fabric, so I'm going to go all the way up to 5. Oh, I think mine got 7, but 5 will do. And I really want to reduce how close together they are. So the lower the number on the stitch length is how close they are together. So at the moment they're 1.4 millimeters apart, which doesn't sound like a lot, but any little gaps will then allow fabric still to fray. So I'm going to go down to about 0.9. Now what you want to do now is you might have a marker on your sewing machine. You might want to stick a bit of like paper tape or washi tape or something like that. All I'm going to do is sink my needle down, and I'm just going to line the edge of my fabric up, because I want, when the needle bounces on the zigzag from left to right, when it goes to the right, I want it to miss my fabric so that it's actually binding and wrapping that edge. So like I said, once you're happy with your position, you might want to just put a little bit of tape or something like that just to remind you. Now I'm not going to start right at the corner. One is because that top bit is going to be caught in a seam allowance in a minute, but also because they're quite intense stitches, there's a high chance that the machine will just want to chew that up. So I'm going to start about 1 centimetre down and minimise the risk of getting it mangled up in my sewing machine. So I'm just going to make sure that I'm happy with those stitches. I might nudge them a little bit closer together and get them a little bit more close together. So it is quite a slow thing, because they are really intense and really close together. It will be quite slow, so don't be tempted to kind of pull your fabric through to speed the process up, because all you're doing is spacing out your zigzags and not really properly binding that edge. So it does feel like it takes a long time. It's definitely worth it. So just to show you the stitches, although the thread colour is quite a good match to the fabric, annoyingly for this. So basically it's sort of binding the edge, and any little hairy bits that sort of peeping through, just give them a trim down, but just make sure when you do that, you're not going to accidentally sort of nick your stitches that you've just done. So I'm sure I will get an opportunity to tidy up the rest of it, but that's what you're looking for, sort of a nice zigzagged hem, or like I said, you could use your overlocker for that. So I've got my main tube, and the first thing I'm going to do is attach the base, so the circular base, to the bottom of this. I always really struggle with calculating this, but basically all you need to do is you can either use Pi if you're really good, or if you're naughty like me, you can go on to a search engine and just calculate the radius or the circumference of your circle by using the circumference. So the circumference of the circle is your bag. So we started off with 62 centimetres and we took 2 off the seam line, so it's 60 centimetres. So my radius was 9.5. And then I added a centimetre seam allowance, so it's 10.5 was my radius. So that's what I've started off with. So to make this easier to put in, like a little bit like I did with the bolster cushion or the doorstop, is I'm going to quarter my tube and quarter the circle so I can match them up. So as it is already in half, I'm just going to take that halfway measurement and I'm going to get some of my heat erasable pen, or you could use tailor's chalk or whatever, and I'm going to mark halfway. I'm then going to bring these markers together. So I'm going to use my seam as one of them, and then my pen mark, and I'm going to stretch it out, and I'm going to mark this one, and then this one at the other side. So that's divided into 4 equal sections now. And I'm going to take my circle, and again I'm going to measure halfway points, and then quarter points. So fold those together, and then so again, a bit like a clock. I've got 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. So I want to trap in some of my strapping. So I'm going to put the plain end at the bottom, but it doesn't matter really which one you do. And I've sort of decided that my fabric doesn't really have a direction, but you will be doing this at the bottom. So I'm just going to put my bag strap on one of the quarter points. I've done it on the seam, so the seam sits against your body, but it's completely up to you. And I'm just going to pin that in place. So there's going to be quite a few layers going on here. If I can even grab them all. So now that's trapped in, I can sort of forget about that. Put my strap in my bag. And I'm going to start matching up my quarter points, so. And pray that my mathematics was indeed correct. And then just matching the quarters up like that. I just find this method means you've just got a little bit less pressure, and you don't end up getting to the end of your circle and realising, oops, you've got tons of fabric left that you shouldn't have, and getting a big like tuck in it. So now I've just got these bits to stretch out. So if you feel confident, you can sew it right like that. If you feel like you want to make a little bit less to squeeze in, I'm going to put a pin in the middle of each of those quarters, so like eighths really, just so that I'm not kind of going to, hopefully not going to make the same sort of mistakes, and again like tucks or little pleats in there. So I'm just sort of stretching my fabric. I think I might have made my circles just a touch big in fear that I would make it too small. But you can always trim a little bit off. If you're doing this and you're thinking, oh my God, I've got so much fabric to ease in there, just trim a little bit off the circumference of your circle. I think I might have made it a touch big, but hey, it'll be fine. Oops. So you've naturally got less fabric on the base, got a little circle, than you have around the tube. So it's the base bit, the circle, I'm going to put down to the bed of my sewing machine now. I'm just going to remind myself to drop back down to my straight stitches before I start overcasting it by accident. And it doesn't particularly matter where you start, because of course you are just going to come all the way around back to the beginning. And just take it slow and steady. So you can see here already, you're going to get all this excess fabric. Now I can control that, I'll keep stopping and readjusting it. If it's underneath and on the base of your sewing machine, you can't see that. So it's really easy to get those little tucks and pleats in it where you don't want them. So just be careful when you're going over where your strap is, because obviously there's quite a lot of bulk there. can tell I'm concentrating because I'm not even waffling. And when you get back to the original starting point, just go over those original stitches and then do all your securing all at once there, so it's nice and strong. And I'm going to zip those pins out. So now I would encourage you to again do that overcasting stitching or overlocking around the base of your bag. I'm not going to do it just for speed. I'm going to move straight on. So just to show you what it's looking like so far. Oh, I like Mary's style. Mary says it'd be good to put a blanket in for a picnic rug. That would be absolutely ideal. Yeah, what a really good idea. So you've got your bag strap coating the bottom and you've got that circular base. So the next thing I'm going to do is move on to the top section and create the drawstring. So the rectangle of fabric I have got is the same length, the same width, so the same circumference as my mat, which was 62 centimetres, and then the depth of this is 13 centimetres. So like I said, I started off with a 75 centimetre piece, so I had 62 for my bag and I actually had 13 left over. But also, if you imagine that as your radius, it's quite good because it covers that full circle. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a tube, but I want to leave a little space to fit the cord in. So a bit like we did with the yoga mat bag, the first step was to make a tube. But what I want to do is I want to leave the gap at the top edge, so it sits nicely at the top, does that cord. So you can either iron this or you can just fold it. So I know where to leave my gap. I'm just going to fold this in half. And I'm going to put a little marker. You could obviously measure it with a ruler, but I do like the cheaty lazy ways. So I'm going to measure my the top of what's going to be the top of the drawstring cord bit, and I'm going to measure 1 centimetre either side, so my gap's about 2 centimetres. Like that. And in effect, so when I sew it together, I'm going to sew from the bottom of it to my gap, leave a gap, and then sew from the bottom of the gap to the bottom of the band. So you've got a little gap there. So I'll just pop a pin in to keep all those edges together. And again, using the same seam allowance. So I'll start off with 3 stitches forward and 3 stitches back to secure it, and then I'll be doing the same at my marker as well. So 3 stitches into reverse and 3 stitches forwards. And I'm just going to bounce that out and move myself along. 1, 2, 3 forward, 1, 2, 3 into reverse. So when it sits on the bag, that little gap will be what your cord sits through. Now, I'm not going to do it, but if you are like worried or you've got a really fraying fabric, what you could do is just press this seam back and just sew a little sort of hem. So if you just pop it on your sewing machine and just sew a little square around there, or a rectangle, should I say, just to cover, just to sort of hold down that seam allowance and stop any potential fraying threads coming through that gap, then obviously you can do. Like I said, I'm not going to do it, but it might be a little idea if you've got a fabric that is fraying particularly badly, or you just want to make it, if you're just a super neat perfectionist. So I'm just taking that tube and I'm just putting it wrong sides together. So the little gap peeps up at the top where the drawstring's coming out, and I'm just going to pop a couple of pins in to keep all those layers together. So this sort of method of creating like a little channel was completely adaptable to any sort of size bag, as long as your tubes, your measurements are all kind of present and correct. So I've got this and I'm going to attach it to my main bag now. So I just want to make sure, to zoom you out a bit, that my bag strap is nice and straight. Oh, I've sewn it the wrong way. Never mind. So again, it's going to go at the top seam here. So I'm just going to pin that into place. If it really bothers me, I might turn the strap round. But it'll still be functional. It's got to be a blooper, hasn't there, on this? So I've got my strap caught in there, and then I'm going to put my drawstring cord channel on. So I'm just going to match up the seams. If you're a bit worried that it's a bit bulky there, of course you could put that somewhere else. You could rotate that around, but I'm just going to keep all the seams together. And I'm just going to fit that on. So all my 3 raw edges are all going together. And again, so you could do that quartering technique, but to be honest, it shouldn't be too bad. If you start off with the same size fabric, same with fabrics, and you've got the same seam allowance, it should just fit on nice like this. And I'm just going to use another 1 centimetre seam allowance to go all the way around that cuffing. And again, it doesn't matter where you start because you're going to come back all the way back to the beginning. So again, as you're approaching where your strap is, just be really careful because again, it is bulky. And then we're almost back at the beginning. So I'm going to zip those pins out. So that's caught the bag strap in there. So the last thing to do, tidy up my fraying edges. So the last thing on the machine would be again to overcast that seam, and then it's nice and tidy on the inside. So I'm just going to turn my machine off because I'm just going to use now some cord and some cord ends just to make them nice and tidy. So I'm just using piping cord. Like I said, it's probably not the most ideal thing, but it will do. It'll be fine, and I obviously can just draw it back out once the nylon cord arrives. So I'm going to grab some cord. So I've got a metre here. You want it to at least go around, and then obviously enough to be a knot. So you could probably get away with a little bit less, but it's not expensive stuff. So I'm just going to pop my safety pin through. Just wriggle that double, and I'm just sort of pushing all the fabric onto the pin, and when it gets so full, I'm just grabbing the head of the pin and just pulling the fabric back. So if you've done elastic and stuff, or ribbons or cords, and you've done this before, you'll know it's this sort of exactly the process that you are working with. I'm almost back at the beginning. Just peep it through. Take my pin off. And then these cord ends, don't have to have these. You could do a little knot or something like that. Or if you've got the nylon stuff, again, you could melt it. I'm just going to put through the end there. And then they just snap together like that. So it just stops the end from fraying, tidies it up, and then will probably help to stop when you pull it through, them sort of disappearing back into the channel that you've just made. Just trying to use a bit of the heat and moisture in my hands just to help that through. Like that, and again just squeeze it together. So there it is, apart from the fact that the strap is the wrong way around, which if I've got time before sewing bee, then I'm probably going to just move that around because it will bug me. That is your yogurt mat bag. So let me just see if I can zoom out. Just fit. Nicely in there. What can you see? I'll tilt you up and then just pull those drawstring cords. So what happens is, oh no, I've not quite caught my top, but never mind. So the drawstring cord will just pull together and obviously fastens up the bag. And then tie your cord like that. So what have I done there? Oh, I know what I've done. So yeah, so a nice and simple project. So like I said, with the strapping and the sliders and things like that, it might be something that you could adapt to other different types of bags. The drawstring channel, again, you could make that much bigger and wider for a laundry bag or something like that. Or of course, picnic blankets, you might find that your picnic rugs are a bit shorter, but the same sort of principle will apply. And just a nice easy way of putting a circular base on the bottom, which normally seem quite scary. I'm just zooming back to me. Sorry, it's always like that, isn't it? So yeah, I'll just tidy that bit up anyway, won't I? But yeah, so just a nice simple bag. It probably seems like quite an arduous task, does a yoga mat bag, but it doesn't have to be. Nice and simple and practical, especially now as hopefully we're all getting back to fitness classes, or like Mary said, picnic rugs and things like that just to throw in the car. So I think I worked out that all the bits and bobs for this straps, sliders cost a couple of pounds, and then the fabric cost £7.50, but like I said, you probably could get a couple out of that. It's quite a bit of wastage. So for under a tenner, I don't think that's bad. And hopefully a nice practical one and really, really pretty yoga mat bag. So I'm just going to fix my multitude of errors there before we all get off to watch Sewing Bee. But I'll see you next Wednesday for the last in sort of series of bag making things, and we're going to be doing a messenger bag. So I hope you've enjoyed that. And please, as always, tag us in your projects and let us know what you think of Sewing Bee too. Thank you very much.